Welcome to The Human Code, the podcast where technology meets humanity, and the future is shaped by the leaders and innovators of today. I'm your host, Don Finley, inviting you on a journey through the fascinating world of tech, leadership, and personal growth. Here, we delve into the stories of visionary minds who are not only driving technological advancement, but also embodying the personal journeys and insights that inspire us all. Each episode, we explore the intersections where human ingenuity meets the cutting edge of technology, unpacking the experiences, challenges, and triumphs that define our era. So, whether you're a tech enthusiast, an inspiring entrepreneur, or simply curious about the human narratives behind the digital revolution, you're in the right place. Welcome to The Human Code. Today, we're joined by Brennan Pursell, an AI and data ethics evangelist whose career spans from historical research to cutting-edge AI innovation. As the author of Outsmarting AI, Power, Profit, and Leadership in the Age of Machines, Brennan brings a unique blend of humanities and technology to the conversation. With his roots in academia and his passion for education, Brennan dives into the challenges and opportunities posed by AI in reshaping the future of learning and work. His thought-provoking insights challenge us to rethink how technology integrates with human agency, creativity, and responsibility in an ever-changing digital world. I'm here with Brennan Pursell. Got to say, Brennan, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Cool.
And additionally, what really got you interested in the intersection of humanity and technology?
Well, that's just humanity. Humanity is humanity because it uses technology. Okay, I get the point. Otters can take rocks and bang up abalone on their chests, and monkeys can take sticks and stick them into ant nests and pull it off and get them to do that kind of thing. But that's what people do. It's just what the people do. And my early background, I'm a fossil. My early background was in history, which is just about people and places over time dealing with life. And man, we're an amazing species. We don't have to philosophize in that direction. So it's always been there. From anything from music making, just the instruments. Like most people have never been close to a viola or a violin. They've never held one. Or like they've never been in the same room as a really good oboe. That is humanity and technology.
So you're going, it's the art and the essence, the dance of life kind of perspective that you have with
Well,
technology.
from our story, it was like that was the early
Okay.
approach with it. And then, of course, I'm a fossil. So I was in college when the first IMAX came out. I was like, oh my God, this solves the footnotes problem. I just love this thing. It's terrific. And then I went on and got a PhD in history. When I majored in history, I thought it was cool. And it was like one of the biggest majors at Stanford. And I thought and it was totally normal. You could do anything with it. And then I wanted to be an educator. It's just who I am. I
Okay.
love learning stuff. And I love passing it on. It's just something I have to do. And this was in the 90s. And I got my PhD at Harvard and then went off to DeSales University. I'm in Eastern Pennsylvania and they needed somebody like me. And because I'm always learning and computers were getting more and more interesting and history was just getting less and less interesting to me. And then the great financial crisis of 2007, 8, 9 hit. I didn't know what the hell was going on. So I started doing an MBA on the side and just also doing some stuff in like basic coding. And so when I was done with my MBA, yeah, I kept teaching, but I started doing a little more business teaching. I was consulting on the side. I helped out with a document management company and just really interested in text and how text was handled. And then part of that, I fell in with some fellow graduates of mine who wanted to start this little consultancy down in Alexandria, Virginia. And one of these guys said, you really should be paying attention to this AI stuff. And at that time, Andrew Yang had started Coursera and he put up his machine learning, his deep learning. And I saw that and my jaw hit the floor. I thought, oh my God, these machines can really almost learn like people. I'm really into learning machine. And just seeing that, the whole cat thing, detecting a cat and back propagation, ka-ching, wow, this is really cool. I do not have the math background to do this stuff, but that's what really made the lights go on for me. I wrote a book with him as a co-author. I was supposed to be the ghost, but the roles flipped. But anyway, the book came out it was done in 2018. And also it set me on my mission at DeSales University, which is all of education is going to change. It just is. And as an educator, it's my mission to prepare 18 to 21, 22 for the job market, which itself is changing now. So we have to change what we do.
I appreciate even just the brevity of it, Because I know that you could go on for hours on this like topic of how you got here, and you have such a dynamic background around the history of this, your deep learning activities. But I really want to touch on the educational aspect
Yeah,
of it.
let's do it.
The world is changing so quickly
You'd
when it
think.
comes to what AI is capable, or the hype of it as well. The implementation is a little bit slower, yet at the same time, we're feeling the pressure that's coming about from either integrating this new tool into our lives and additionally reframing how we're doing education. What are some of the biggest challenges that you see from the student side of this?
Institutional inertia.
Yeah.
And this is the big, sorry, I'm a trained historian. This is just people don't like to change. Once they get older and more comfortable, they dig in. And the
Yeah.
nature of bureaucracies is to resist change. Oh my God. It's so students have to deal with these bureaucracies that are telling them, don't mess around with this. Don't explore this. Don't get into this. There are risks. I don't know about you, but I think one of the biggest risks out there for education, we can't abandon education. We can't can all the school districts. What COVID showed us is how valuable it is for the state, for all society to have a teacher in a classroom. Need it, economies need it, communities need it, companies need it. You're nodding. We're in agreement. So that's not going to go away. But what they teach and how they teach and what kids should learn and how they should learn to be critical, to solve problems when they have these tools that can basically do all the stuff that they were told that they need to do. The big problem.
And so you and I are somewhat fossils, and I love this because most of my business partners are 10, 15 years older than me, right?
Oh, and you're
so
calling yourself a fossil?
I'm the young one in the institute.
And you call yourself a fossil?
No, I don't. But at the
okay.
same time, I hear you using that term.
Oh,
I understand the relationship between your students and where you're at. But you and I are only a couple of years apart at most.
I think I got a couple decades.
I'm 57. Decades. Okay. Oh, yeah, never mind. You are. Never mind.
Yeah,
okay,
that's
fossil.
right.
I'll give you
fossil.
Okay.
Just let me be the fossil.
Yeah.
You may feel like one in the field you're in, but anyway.
So basically, what's the point of education, though? I think that's what we have to come back to. You said
what's
there is
the point
so
of
many
education?
Benefits.
There's the whole social side. Do you have kids?
No.
All right. Kids have to grow up and get out of the house.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest disaster, and we see this across our country, is the number of adults that come back to their parents' basements and they game themselves to death.
Yeah.
That's not good. Not good for a society, a country, anything.
I think it's doubled over the last 20 years.
Not surprised.
We went from 10 to 20% of young adults that go back.
2 and 3 generation families. Nothing against it. Works great in some cultures. But for my students, these are young adults and they're in that transition. They want to get away from mom and dad. They need to make it on their own. They have to compete. And we both agree that corporations don't give a damn about them. Corporations will use them, and when they're no longer useful, they will be jettisoned. It's just the nature of it.
Yeah.
And so they need to compete. They need to deal with this world that is developing around them, and the institutions that should prepare them are schlepping. And it starts with elementary school. I wouldn't really go there. I think kids should do a lot with pencil and paper and basic reading and math and stuff like that. But in middle school is where a lot of changes happen. Should be happening. And then it's been said for many years that American education is really pretty good, but the longer you stay in it, the worse it gets. The public from K to 12, if you just look at like test results. But then we have our universities, which are incredibly competitive.
Incredible. Yeah.
So we got some problems there. And so I think everybody should be doing some form of code. Everybody who wants to do anything with knowledge work. This doesn't pertain to roofers. This doesn't pertain to plumbers. We need them. They're not going away. Sal Khan, love what he does, but his predictions that soon 90% of us will be doing creative work and machines will be doing everything else. Dude, what planet are you on? Okay, I'm from the Bay Area, so I know what planet he's on.
Oh, okay. No, I've done a lot
Where
of
are you?
Bay Area. I'm in Philly.
Okay.
Yeah. So Eastern Pennsylvania as well, but I bi-coastal, have done a lot of work in the Bay Area as well.
All my family's out there. I'm the freak who left.
Love it. I grew up in Ohio.
What were you doing in the 90s? You were getting a PhD at Harvard. You could have been part of the revolution. And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, but why?
I don't
I
know.
think what age has definitely provided me is that reflective moment of saying, you know what, I could chase everything that ever existed. I could go to the highest mountains, and at the same time, there's not happiness there.
You have to do what's right for you at the time. And who cares? Once it happens, and there's no point in crying over spilled milk. But anyway, so
Yeah.
back to education. That's the big problem. And institutions aren't adjusting. Your question was, how are the young people dealing with this? And I think too many aren't aware. The other big thing is that they are all being used by AI. They need to learn how to use it.
Yeah.
It is shocking
So
how many just are willing, just, shall we say, content creators, data creators that train up these new things, getting completely addicted to social media or the gaming or fantasy sports or pornography or whatever it is. And they're subjecting themselves to it. And they don't see that these algorithms, these processes are going to make more and more decisions about their lives. And they need to get ready for this world that's already taking shape.
do you think that the side of them as consumers of the algorithms are the same challenge that we face with corporations and employment as well? Like it's basically looking to maximize your attention, which maximizes their revenue, and therefore you're effectively the product. But we haven't taught people how to interact in that world because I think we're still figuring that out ourselves around
Yeah.
like social media has only been around, what, 15 years now?
Yeah.
And we're now starting to see the challenges that come about from lack of attention, the downfall of being able to like make decisions for yourself, the chasing of dopamine.
So,
Uh,
yeah, that's the big risk. And I think one of the biggest questions in education is, how is this going to change education? And
yeah.
nobody knows. The biggest risk is that dependence on these machines that can answer all your questions for you with an increasing level of accuracy. I just spent an hour yesterday with a mathematician, a physicist, and an organic chemist.
Oh,
And
this
we
is
were
a good joke.
huh?
This is a good joke.
We were, if only, we were trying to mess up. We were trying to make GPT-01 mess up with its problem solving capabilities.
Yeah.
Couldn't do it. He threw a Taylor series at it based on this one integer that wouldn't work. And the thing not only said, that can't work, here's what you should do to make it work.
It's,
Change this and do that. And they were like, oh my God. And then at the end of an organic chemistry problem, it said, so here's what's important. And here's some other things you should consider. And then the sources went in were actually accurate. They weren't made up. Yeah. It's really something else. And I need to get the accountants in with me because our accountants are sitting back and saying, it'll never figure out journaling.
oh, that's so easy. Yeah.
Maybe journaling when you have the CEO and the CFO breathing down your neck, saying that you're going to gap just principles. You'll put this in the footnotes and you make this look over that way.
Yep.
I think we should make it more machine-like, but maybe the reality of the business isn't. That's where mechanics interact or collides with culture.
Well, and I think you're hitting on an important note as far as what is the underlying intent of this journal entry. And there is a bit, it's not even creative, but it's a bit of understanding the flow and the information that is not immediately accessible by that line item entry that gets incorporated into the footnotes that gets slid in. And I know when we were working on, I don't do this anymore, not because it's wrong, but because I don't have to deal in that situation of working with CapEx versus OpEx.
Okay.
And so how do you actually want to categorize a transaction of whether it is OpEx or CapEx?
That's
and
right.
You can change that just based on the story that you have for that interaction.
Yes.
And I think those moments are rather human in relation of how we build and tell stories together.
Yes.
That's where the AI isn't exactly going, but fields of mathematics, science, like very hard sciences, there are definitive answers that you can get to.
Yes.
And that is the amazing beauty of what happens and where I think humans can play a continued role versus where humans can like delegate to.
That's right.
And so we saw this happen with the calculator as well.
Oh, yes.
And I grew up in a time where I was like, no, put your calculator away. You've got to learn how to do these things.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get to the point of, no, I don't have to know how, I know how to do it and I can delegate it to the machine.
Which is how
but at the same time, it still saves me time. Yet today, we're now dealing with a technology that has intelligence. And that's the first time that we've really seen this, like a shovel that can choose where it wants to shovel.
let's dig into that. Do you really think these things they have intelligence?
That is,
Or maybe we don't want to go there. Let's take a
no,
step
we
back. Let's take a
totally
step
can.
back.
I will
So when the
dive
pocket
deep in.
calculator showed up, there's like journalists, there's old like yellow newspaper pictures of math teachers protesting, saying that this will make idiots out of everybody. These things are a disaster. We're not going to change any curriculum. And guess what? It's everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere. But it calculates. And everything, these Meta's movie AI gen, which is jaw-dropping that they're going to roll out, it's still just running the numbers. That's what it does. But it's
Okay, but there's
us.
something.
It's we who decide whether the results are creative or not. We're the judge.
Oh, exactly. But there's also something else that's happening. With movie generation and video generation, we're seeing that these models are actually doing real-time physics generation as well. They have some bit of realistic nature to them.
It can seem that way.
Like,
Remember when Sora was running its little ship in the coffee cup and people were saying it has a worldview? Yeah, until the wave like went in the wrong place. So it gives these fleeting images of a worldview. I'm sorry, I'm just more of the camp.
No.
I'm more of the camp. It's just a goddamn machine. And boy, can it fool us.
Yeah.
But it doesn't know what it's doing.
But the question is, what would it have to do in order for us to definitively know that it's doing it? Because in all honesty, you're literally just a bunch of bits on a screen to me right now.
I beg your pardon.
I am the same to you, right? We know that we're talking to humans.
No, dude, Don, no way. No way. I know.
You're
not an algorithm. I know. And you said you're in Eastern Philly, and maybe you're lying to me, but I don't care.
Mhm.
No, and I hope that drink tastes good. But
It
the
really
algorithms aren't that good. Notebook LM, though, that Google rolled out,
Yeah.
where you just throw in scholarly articles and boom, makes like a little radio show for you.
Yeah.
I think that's fantastic. That is where it's heading. And there was that guy, was he in Singapore? Or he was in Hong Kong? And he got deep-faked. He had a video called Deepfake, and the crooks persuaded him to wire $25 million.
Yeah.
This is the world we're heading into.
For people who aren't familiar with that, basically, a hacker figured out the persona, the images of the executive team, the CFO, and also I think a VP of finance as well. They got on a Zoom together.
Yes, and
deep faked him enough that he transferred the 25 million from an account into the hacker's name.
This isn't good. And this is where it's heading. And then pretty soon it's going to be holographic images. But no, Don, you're more than pixels.
I know you're more than pixels too, buddy. This is the appreciation that we got to pick up. And at the same time, what is that moment that switches from it actually having intelligence to mimicking, or from mimicking to having intelligence?
Yeah, that's the whole AGI thing. I'm not even going.
Because so another experience that I had back in like 2015, right?
Yeah.
So this is neural networks are finally having their renaissance. And I took my text messages that I had with a girlfriend of mine at the time, and I trained an NN, recurrent neural network, on text messages, and then my messages to her, and then it was supposed to predict her responses.
Did you automate your girlfriend communications?
I did. And this is the funniest part about it.
Oh God.
Is I was playing around to see how it would go, and I trained it on a MacBook Air. So we're not even talking about a lot of power to it. Trained it over the course of a day. The first thing that it had learned is basically where to put the spaces. It was just a bunch of garbage, and then you saw it put spaces in between words, and then you saw words starting to form, then you saw sentences, and you saw verb placement, and like it started to get it. And so I asked it a couple questions. I was like, oh, this is garbage. And then it has that one hit where it actually responds in a way that you're like, that's her. That's the essence of her. And I go, we are so easily fooled into personifying something and giving it those anamorphic qualities.
That's right.
When it just displays the glimmer of it.
Yes. That's what's happening.
That's where we're at today, is we're seeing these like glimmers of it, but it does feel like it's a lot closer.
Oh yeah, it's no question that it's constantly improving at a dizzying pace, and we don't know where it's going to go. And of course, the billionaire tech bros are just raking it in on the promise of AGI and stuff like that. But yeah, that's what we're looking at. It's nuts. And people need to discern for themselves. And I think there's another insight about it, that the fact, all right, so you trained your RNN on just those texts that you had. How many? probably a few hundred.
A few thousand, right?
Definitely a
Like,
few
but
thousand.
a
Okay.
few thousand.
But not in the millions. And
We're
then,
not talking millions. We're not talking
okay,
like a really rich
when you
here.
train these LLMs on 10 to the 14 tokens,
Yep.
it's the internet. And then a lot of the things that come out of it, you're right. I suppose none of us really are all that original. And there's that old line that's been around for a long time. We're all born originals and we all die carbon copies. The carbon copy is now dead. So I suppose we all die just predictable outputs. How exceptional are we? And there's 8 billion of us on the planet. And where is this heading? I don't know. But boy, yeah, it is certainly simulating tremendous knowledge and intelligence. Sorry?
Let's go into that idea that you're talking about here.
Which one?
Is that we're all born original and we all die carbon copies.
Oh, it's just an old line.
But no, there is some validity to it, right? Because we basically go through an education system that formalizes us. We go through childhood and we are social creatures that kind of build us together. And one of the early childhood fears, what's that?
There's physical evidence. Your genome is your genome. It's nobody else's.
Exactly.
And it's just experiential. Your story is your story. We're all living between here. We're all stuck in ourselves. We can't get out of ourselves. Okay. My daughter might be obsessed with images of herself. A zillion pictures aren't enough, but she's still stuck inside of herself. Whoever is obsessed with their own image, they can really go down that path deep. But also, when we go through that door of death, you go alone. There's plenty of people that have tried to make it a communal exercise. It doesn't work.
No.
So it's your life, it's your story, and nobody else's, and we have to deal with that.
Wrapping this into the education side, do you think that there's an opportunity to change education so that it is helping people to understand that it is their own world that they're living in, their own experience, and to take some responsibility instead of delegating that responsibility to another entity or prematurely delegating it to that space? Is there some responsibility that we have to educate the youth in that factor as well?
Given the current standards for student learning outcomes and curriculum subjects, there is no room for whatsoever. I'm just thinking of the big systems there.
Yeah.
Private institutions can be more nimble.
Okay.
Of course, it's part of ethics, doing the right thing by yourself and by others. There's a lot we can do with that. But then there's also cultural upbringing, the aspect of being human. I don't know about you. I haven't figured out anything. Figured things out, Don. No. I used to be so much smarter. I figured out in my 20s. I was so good to go. Anyway,
I see brilliant. You and I are the same. Absolutely brilliant in my 20s, and now in my 40s, yeah. I have way more questions.
And I'm more and more impressed by the contingency of things and the fragility. The one thing we are absolutely seeing among 18 to 22-year-olds is a soaring incidence of anxiety, depression, self-hatred, listlessness, directionlessness, hopelessness. Some people are talking about a meta crisis.
Yeah.
And having kids of my own that are moving into that age and just working with them all the time, we're seeing more and more. This is also the generation that spent a bad part of a year locked up at home. And they're to a certain extent, they're raised by social media algorithms and media feeds that, as you mentioned before, are solely there to enhance engagement, regardless of what the content is. And I think that's an appalling situation. And I wish authorities would do something about it. But I'm sorry, in this system of ours, there's too much money in it. And no one wants to end that party. So I think we're stuck with it. So definitely, we're the land of individualism. So it behooves the individual and the family to raise the kid, to have the self-respect, to know when to call it quits. But it's really hard to do that with a 12 and a 13-year-old who has no sense of control.
Oh, I totally understand. And I'm glad that I didn't grow up in that environment because I would not have had the self-control. And it is literally right there. But there was also that curiosity. Like actually 12 years old, I think we got our first computer. So that was definitely an endless source of fascination for me. But
so yeah, DeSales, we're getting them from all sides. They come from DeSales University up in Allentown, just south of Allentown. We're in Center Valley. We're getting them. Some are homeschooled. Some are from big urban public school districts. Others have been have gone through private Catholic education the whole way. It's everything you can imagine. We're getting more diverse all the time. I love it. There's recent immigrants from Caribbean and North Africa and Asia and other things. The place is changing all the time. There's constant change. But these kids need to know what they're heading into. And local institutions have got to adjust to the new productive tools. The way we work is changing. Everyone's reeling. This last year, we did a series of our Forum for Ethics in the Workplace. And the 3 breakfasts of the year were all about different AI tools. And I gave keynotes about here's what's happening here and here's what's happening. So for you businesses, you have to decide what your rules for data management are. This is all about data. It's still GIGO, garbage in, garbage out, what the smaller entities work with. Smaller entities do not scrape the internet and then just get the probabilities to work in their favor. But I think everyone is reeling. Just what do we do? There's some of our graduates from sales are at PricewaterhouseCoopers and other larger institutions, and they're saying, yeah, we have to invest in this. We're not quite sure what we're investing in, but we know things are changing. We know there's a competitive edge to be won. There's productivity gains to be won, but there are also costs and there are risks. And so I'm dealing with daily imposter syndrome, and I'm handed questions about where this is headed, and I don't know.
What do you ground yourself in? Because I find myself to be in a place of lack of clarity. My go-to is basically meditating, sitting, and just quieting everything to see what comes through. Like, where do you find your clarity?
Also in quiet, but I get my peace back. I can quiet my mind being in nature. But that is also no longer so stable, which gets us back to the meta crisis. It's just the world we're living in. But yeah, there's that. And then there's sense of purpose. And I'm a family man. I have my mission. My mission is my marriage, my family, and my kids. And then by extension, my students at sales. I think about them a lot more than they think about me. They're not interested in people like me. They're just not. They're tuned into each other. I get it. But they need some help. And we're trying to do our best by them. Really are. But it's not easy.
I can completely understand. So what could we be doing for our students? And how can they take an action as well, stepping into this new age?
That's the $1 million question. And there's a lot. I mean, we could come up with new ways. We've got to make higher ed less expensive. For crying out loud, it's so expensive. It's just nuts. But how do you do this? How do you use the free learning tools that are just there for free? What blows me away most about the deep learning community that's made all this possible is the generosity. The way people just develop JSON and put it out there. They just develop pandas and put it up there. And just what Andrew Ng does, God, I love that guy. He's amazing. To shape curriculum. But again, it gets back to my earlier point, the inertia of institutions. If we really change things the way we want to, in some cases, the way I'd like to see it to sales, our accreditors would breathe fire down our backs and say, you've got to be kidding. This isn't the way things work. And here we are in an election year, and I'm not going to go there. But yeah, there's another example of practices and institutions that are absolutely stuck on certain ways that we know rationally it could be done better, more efficiently, more securely by looking at examples around the world.
There's a lot to be learned from this entire experience. Brennan, I got to say, thank you so much for being on with us today.
Thank you for
really. Yeah. And I love the bit of wisdom as far as taking our own responsibility and
wisdom that came from you, taking responsibility.
Thank you for tuning into The Human Code, sponsored by Findustries, where we harness AI to elevate your business. By improving operational efficiency and accelerating growth, we turn opportunities into reality. Let Findustries be your guide to AI mastery, making success inevitable. Explore how at findustries.co.